Hi everyone, I'm Michael Hill with Canine Chronicle TV, and I'm your host for Next Gen, focusing on showcasing the next generation of the dog fancy. And today I'm excited to be joined by Sarah Murphy in Florida of Bio Bees and Hounds. And we're going to talk about how she got started in the sport. Why don't we start with, what was your first experience at a dog show, Sarah?
Well, the first dog show I participated in was an experience my close friends could tell you about. They thankfully weren't there. My mom and my aunt were. I had only ever seen dog shows on TV, so when I went to my local match with my little pug that we got from some Mennonite people in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, I really dressed up. I mean, big time, like a school dance. Yes. Gabby Gilbo with the Bedlingtons, she calls it my prom dress. And she's still, though, you know, we've been friends for 16 years. She's still never seen a picture. So that's thankful. That was my first experience at a dog show.
How did you go from your first pug, you know, not growing up with a family in the sport, to working with some professionals? Like, I know you were working extensively with Marjorie Good Stallions. How did that happen?
Well, we got started, I got started showing dogs because my aunt was a pet sitter, and she would take me along with her to her clients' houses to take care of the dogs, and two of her clients bred Shelties. And so when they found out I was getting that pug, they started taking me to handling classes to teach me, you know, how to show dogs. They thought I would like it, and I did. And so when I got my little pug, he had papers, so I was showing him in juniors in the breed, and I remember thinking, you know, he's a show dog, he needs to look his best. So I was 11, and the night before our shows, I would paint his toenails with black nail polish. And just about that time, the internet was starting to become something that my friends in my age group were starting to use. And so I remember finding Infodog's Winners and Bragging Rights page and all the different breeds, and just clicking through the breeds, looking at each one I had never heard of, and I saw a Beef and Hound, and I'm like, what is that? So I started clicking through all the dogs. I thought they were beautiful, but we didn't have any entered at the shows where I lived in New Jersey. So I had gone to visit one of my aunts who lived in Orlando, and we took my pug, and I entered their June Orlando shows, and I saw there were going to be a Beef and Hounds. And so I made sure to get over to the ring to see them. And I saw the one that I liked the best, and I talked to the lady, and her name was Judy Umek, and she's a legend in our breed. And she took me back to her setup, and she stacked her dogs so I could take pictures of him on my disposable camera. Oh. And I just fell in love with the breed, and I took the information of the breeder who bred that dog, and she took my information. And when I got back to New Jersey, I already had a voicemail from the breeder telling me she had a litter, and I was just determined to have an Beef and Hound. So we brought him home later that year. Oh my God.
And how old were you then?
12.
Wow. So this was something you were convicted of from the beginning.
Yes.
I love that. And so this first, the Beef and Hound and the pug, did you keep showing them regularly? How often were you going to shows at that point?
Well, I was not going to shows very frequently. It was mainly just the ones that were very local. Once I started and I got my Abithan, the pug was primarily my junior's dog. And even still, I think we went to maybe 2 shows a year. And so it was not very much at that time.
And what was your experience like, you know, especially with being someone that young, competing at dog shows? Did you find it welcoming or, you know, overwhelming? What was your feel?
I am somebody who has a lot of social anxiety, and so people could probably have been as welcoming as they could be, and I still would have been very nervous. I remember there being people who were very nice to me, some local pug breeders in Florida. They were amazing to me, even though I was just some kid that didn't know what she was doing, and I had this ugly pug who was, you know, adorable to us. But he was like, you know, a 30-pound pug. He was a big boy. they took me under their wing, and they really helped me with the pugs and just getting started with pretty much any question that I had. They were really, really nice to me. And so I tried to stick around with them, stick around with the Sheltie people who got me started. And I mean, I remember the first time taking my Ibethan Hound into the group ring. I guess there wasn't an Afghan at that show because everybody kind of pushed me into leading the group. And that was something I was not prepared for. And I remember a Saluki bit my Ibethan Hound in the face, and I was just, it was an experience for my first time in the group.
What a start.
But overall, I mean, I can't remember anybody being mean.
Sure.
Just, it was certainly, we were an outsider family. We didn't really know what was going on, so we went and we showed, and then we went to the vendors, and then went home.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm rambling on this.
Yeah, no, I love it. Well, you know, I think it's a special thing to talk about because, as you said, like, you're an outsider family, and a lot of people in dogs are fortunate to have grown up, you know, maybe even being second, third, more generations in the sport of dogs. And that's a totally different experience than someone, especially at your young age, who just says, hey, I love my dog and I want to compete with it. But it's a lot to pick up. It's a lot to learn. And it's a lot of investment and expenses and time, especially if you're a family to do that. That's pretty special. How did you transition from that kind of level of involvement to working with professional handlers like Marjorie?
Well, let's see, when I started, I got the pug in 2001, I got my Ibethan in 2002, and for several years, I would travel to my Ibethan breeder's house in Southern Virginia, took a Greyhound bus until I got my license and I could drive there myself, so that we could go and do shows in like Salem, Virginia, and Greensboro, North Carolina in the summertime. And so I was showing a bitch that she had bred that lived near me in New Jersey. And I was at the shows in Freehold, New Jersey, and I guess this was Memorial Day weekend 2009. And I was working at CVS in the photo lab, and I had graduated high school the year before. And my friend Gabby Gilbo, she has Bedlington Terriers, and her mom, Laurie Zimbrewski, walked up to me and said, listen, we're done. You're not working in the photo lab anymore. You're working for a handler. This is what you want to do. You love dogs. You're good at this. And Marjorie Good needs an assistant because her assistant previously she was from Sweden, and she had to go back to work on getting her visa to be able to come back. So they introduced me to Marjorie, and I said, you know, I don't know how to groom dogs. And Marjorie told me, well, then you don't know how to groom dogs wrong. So I will teach you. Yeah, the next weekend, I started at a local show with Marjorie, and I drove to it in Pennsylvania and helped her. It was a 3-day show, and I actually had to, I think I only did the first 2 days because I had to work at CVS for my last day on that Sunday. And then the weekend after that, we started traveling together, and it was really amazing. I got tossed right in. We had a lot of dogs from Airedales to Norwiches, and I had never been up close with terriers before at all. Learned a lot about them.
That's all right.
But yeah, I mean, she taught me everything. And the great part about it was I loved my Ibethan Hounds. I knew I always wanted to breed Ibethan Hounds eventually, but I thought that I really wanted to become a professional handler. Like, that was like the top for me. And once I worked for Marge, I had a really unique opportunity because not only is she a professional handler, but she's a master breeder. And once I was able to be there, one of my first weekends working for her, and see a Sealyham be born, not only a Sealyham, but a Charmin baby be born. And to get to see that and to be there to whelp Airedale litters and Kerry Blue litters and see all of these puppies and really pick her brain about how does she put these dogs together? How do you look at dogs? Because when I started with her, I kind of knew how to look at dogs, but I remember her asking me, she had just trimmed one of the Sealies, and okay, I'm going to trot it down and back. Tell me if any hair's sticking out. And I'm looking at this dog. I'm like, all of its hair's sticking out. It's full of hair. Like, Ibizan hounds have no hair. So I just see this cloud and I'm like, I don't know. And to be able to learn from her, to see the structure, see the dog's legs underneath all that hair. And, you know, it really taught me so much about structure that I never knew before. I never even thought to think about before. And I thought, you know, if Marjorie Good can take a dog with legs this long to take steps this big, then she can teach me how to make Ibizan hounds the way that I would like to see them. And so I had that really great opportunity to find out that, yes, I love handling dogs, but breeding dogs is really my passion. That's my main place in the sport.
I love that. And also, like, what a great experience to also work with somebody who's dealing with, you know, as a real preservation breeder, because, you know, both the Ibizans and Sealyhams, like, that's not a breed you see everywhere. There's not a pet market, you know, where you can kind of do test breedings all the time, because you have to be very judicious about that kind of limited gene pool, right? Right.
Yeah. I mean, certainly with both breeds, I would say maybe, I mean, you could say it's an advantage and a disadvantage, but an advantage of a Sealyham that has a smaller litter means that you can do 2 litters from a bitch and have the same amount of puppies if you don't have a lot of pet homes.
No, but with a smaller dog, you have smaller litters. They take up less space versus your Ibizan.
Yeah, but I mean, my thought on it is, if I breed an Ibizan hound litter, it's probably going to be, the numbers are going to be double of a small breed. And so if I only have, you know, if I'm going to keep one, let's say a co-owner takes one, I have a show home over here, but I have 7 puppies. Now I have 4 puppies to put in pet homes, and that's just one combination. That's one pedigree. And so a smaller breed, you have less puppies, and so you have the same number of puppies to do those things with 2 different pedigrees to work with. So it's a blessing and a curse with how big your litter sizes are, but certainly the options for the gene pool are limited in both breeds. In Ibizan hounds, we have a really big population of hunting dogs overseas that are not registered, and so they're not usable to us. Where Sealyhams, I think, probably for the most part, they are registered. I know Marjorie's been making a lot of use of imports and really beautiful dogs from overseas, and it's a lot of fun when I get to go north and I see her at shows, and I ask her, okay, who are all these dogs that, you know, they weren't there when I was there, and it's really cool to say, oh, it was that one's great grandpuppy, and then I brought this one from over here, and so it's really cool. I still just value her opinion on pretty much everything that I do with the dogs. I sent her photos and videos of my last litter because it was during COVID, and I'm like, well, how am I going to get a good evaluation here? So I'm like, I called Marge up and we did it virtually. And so it's really been great. You know, it wasn't just 5.5 years of working for her. It's really a lifetime friendship, and
a real relationship.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I could not be more thankful to have her.
So what would you say, either as a handler or as a breeder, both, what if you had to pick one of your most memorable moments or experiences with dogs, what would you say that is?
Well, I mean, as far as a handler, I would say probably the first time that I won the breed at Westminster. So at Westminster in 2012, Donald Sturz was the judge, and yeah, so the 2 top Ibizan hounds were there and mine, and Donald Sturz pulled us into the middle and had us each free stack and sent each girl around and back into the middle. And so then he looks over, he pulls a dog, and he puts him in position. So I thought, okay, we're all competing for best of opposite. And then he takes one of the bitches and he puts her behind him, and then he takes the other bitch and puts her behind her. And then he turns around and he calls Elin to go in front of the dog. And my heart just absolutely stopped. And so then he sent us to go around. So we do. And he said she won. And I just absolutely fell to my knees. I mean, I started crying into her neck. And it was such a special moment because this was something that I got into shows from watching this dog show. And to be able to win with my own dog there was really, really awesome.
How amazing.
And as a breeder, I'd say my most memorable is in 2016, my bitch Phoebe had a really large litter, and she had 14 puppies in less than 2 hours, and they were 6 days early. And 2 of them were stillborn, and the rest of them, they were so little and they weren't doing well. We lost a couple of them, but I worked really hard. My veterinarian is amazing, and she sent me home with an incubator, and I had to hand raise the babies. Phoebe was being really excellent about it. I'd still give them to her, let her nurse them, but then I would finish them off with formula and give them I had to give them enemas because they were so dehydrated that they were constipated, and give them fluids and then put them back into their incubator and start all over again. And most of them at about 2.5 weeks really caught up, and they were doing great. They didn't need a lot of help, but I had one little one, and he didn't, he was trying, but he was so far behind. He was a third the size of the others. And then he got to a point where he was small, but he was doing okay. And then at 4 weeks, Phoebe stepped on him, and it dislocated his hip. And I really, really thought we were going to lose him, because until I realized his hip was dislocated, he was just laying there. He was just screaming constantly. He would only stop screaming if I was touching him. And I took him back to my awesome vet, and she said, anybody who wants to eat deserves a chance to live. And so she said, okay, do this, this, and this, and take him home. And she would text me in the middle of the night to make sure he was doing okay. And he became hand raised at that point entirely. And I remember posting photos of his progress, and I've never gotten so many puppy inquiries for a puppy as I did for this little thing. He looked like, my roommate Joey called him a Mexican street chihuahua. Like, he had these giant eyes, this big head. He was really goofy looking. And I just thought, like, I was almost insulted when people would ask for him. So I'm like, do people ask for other people's children? Like, this is my son. And this is my baby. How dare you?
Hands off.
So, like, how would you think I would just give him to you? And at 5 months, he caught up with everybody. We knew his hip was dislocated. We tried to put it back. It wouldn't stay, so we knew he was going to have a surgery later on. But even before he had his surgery, he loved lure coursing, and so he got his senior courser title. And after he had his surgery, he had an FHO, and they took the head of his femur off. And 2 months later, he was back to lure coursing, and he became a field champion. And he just, nothing stopped him. And pretty much anything he's ever done is the most memorable moment I've had as a breeder, because I've had some really wonderful dogs and wonderful show moments. But I mean, that little puppy, he so many times could have just gone, and I just worked really, really hard on him. And not only did he survive, but he's a totally healthy dog. And so certainly he's never left me, and he goes everywhere with me. And so, yeah, I think, I am grateful for all the successes the dogs have had in the ring, on the field. But if every moment that I've ever had led me to having Tiny Miracle, then that is the epitome that I can have as a breeder.
I love that. Your passion for your dogs is so apparent there. And I think that's such a important thing for people who've never bred a dog to realize is it's not like a get-rich-quick operation. It's not easy. It is extremely difficult, extremely risky. So many things can go wrong, and these fragile living things are dependent on you, and it's a testament to your commitment that that dog has the life that he has. So I think I love that you share that, because I think that's really important for people to realize, because shows come and go, right? But it's a small portion of the entire life of the dog, you know? Oh,
absolutely.
So now that you're kind of where you are, where you have a breeding program, you've had several generations of successful dogs in a lot of different venues, and you've kind of built a life on your own. Looking back on your progression through that pathway in dogs, one, would you do it again? And two, has that given you any insight on maybe things that would be important for other people in the sport of dogs to be aware of or focus on, especially in regards to encouraging involvement for young people, new people who didn't grow up in the sport, to find that kind of passion that you found in the sport of dogs?
I don't know that I would change anything. I like a long time ago, I would think I wished I would have worked for a handler earlier. But having been going to school, I wasn't able to. And if I had, maybe I wouldn't have ended up working with Marge. And so I wouldn't change that. And as far as getting people involved, what I like to try to do with my puppy homes is, especially if they have a pet, they just want it as a pet, but it is show quality. If it is somewhere where I can access those people, they either live local to me or maybe they live in an area that I travel to for shows a lot, try to encourage them, because at the very least, dog shows are a very good way for pet owners to have their dogs become socialized, become totally okay with strangers touching them. I had so many of my puppy people that they just wanted pets, but they either showed their dog or they let their dog be shown, say how much their veterinarian compliments the dog on its behavior, or they take it to doggy daycare and, you know, the people say it's so well behaved. And I think that showing really does give that little bit to the dogs that you don't get if you just take them to Home Depot or other places where you can socialize on PetSmart or whatever. And also a lot of the people I have tried to encourage to come to performance events. And usually that seems to grab people. And once they can come to the events for the first time, last weekend I had a family come, and they just wanted a pet, but they drove, I think, 3.5 or 4 hours to come and just watch lure coursing with their 6-month-old puppy. And I think it might have hooked them, you know, because the dog had a great time. And so it's really just about seeing the dogs react to the environment, because I think that a lot of people who aren't already in dog events, they see the dog show on TV, they like seeing the dogs, but the dogs don't always look like they're having a great time because they're trained to stand there, and the video isn't showing when you're on the sidelines and the handlers are tossing treats to them, getting them to do their tricks or playing with them. They're showing the dog that's currently being exhibited. So coming to a dog show and just inviting your puppy families to come out, I think that has done a lot to get my puppy families involved. I've had several dogs over the last couple years that we've revoked limited registration because the people wanted to get into dog shows. And so I just, you know, try to encourage them to come along if I'm going to be there, or if I know somebody, a friend of mine, who will help them. I had a family go and do lure coursing. I knew my friend Erica was going to be at the field trial. I said, you cannot ask for a better person to get you started here. She will help you. She has all the gear. And they now, I mean, it's my breeding, but they've been running with my dogs and beating all my dogs every time. And they're really into it now. So, I mean, that certainly helps get them interested. So, I mean, I for other people that don't have dogs from me, I mean, I've tried to be supportive of junior handlers and providing dogs for juniors to show, even if they live with me. But
I think that's great. I mean, I think you're really touching on an important part about, like, particularly with sight hounds and your breed, that there are events that allow the dogs to do what they're bred to do. And for a lot of people, there's just not a venue to let your sight hound chase things, right? Because of the safety aspect, right? So, like, we can have, doggy daycare or dog parks, but those are smaller spaces, and we're not going to, have that kind of set up. So I think there is something that you can just, no matter what your background is, you can see that dog is doing what they're made to do. And I think that's when they are shown at their most beautiful. So I think that's a really important part. It's not so much about, like, is everybody going to a dog show, but it's about how are people taking the quality of life for both themselves and their dogs to that next level and realizing the resources that are out there.
Yeah. And I think it's really great now that a lot of shows are having the cat trials and the fast cats in combination for the dock diving, and they're having all of those things at one place, because you get spectators who get to come and see multiple things. You get the show people who get exposed to other things to do with their dogs. I know Gabby and Laurie with the Bedlingtons, they're always running from conformation to take their dogs and race them and then run back and groom them back up. And I mean, the dogs love to do all different things. And then you also have the people who are coming for the performance events, who maybe they're coming with their mixed breed dog, and they come and they get to see the show while they're waiting for their next turn. And they get to see all the different breeds. Maybe they see something that they haven't seen before, and they want to get into it. So somebody had asked me last weekend what I thought the best thing to get into for somebody new, no matter what kind of dog. And I really think that those cat and fast cat events are probably the best, because there's no training. Dog either does it or they don't. If they do it, they have a great time, and you take home a tired dog. So
hard to beat that deal. No, I think that's wonderful to share. And I think also it's great, to point out too, that again, you don't have to choose between one or the other. You don't have to be performance or confirmation. And especially when clubs are making the decision to put all that together, not only does it make sense from a financial business perspective, but it bridges the gap between these different worlds becoming ostracized from each other and opposed to each other, instead helps it to become something that's more cohesive and just looking at, like, wholesome dog ownership.
Yeah, which is something that's really great in my breed in particular, because we don't have a divide in type. We don't have show versus
field type.
Conformation. Certainly the dogs that are hunting, and that's their only job out in, in Spain or wherever, they don't exactly look quite the same, but we have people who are doing open field coursing here with dogs that are American bred and primarily out west. But I mean, you have dogs who are best in field winners, and they're also grand champions. They're also national specialty winners. And that's not just one line of Ibethans, that's all lines. That's wire, smooth, everything. So it's a really, really nice feature of our breed that you don't have to choose one or the other. You don't have something that, I want to course with it, but so it's not going to do very well in the show ring. You can do everything. I mean, our national, I would say probably we have whatever our breed entry is, usually at least 2/3 of that is our lure coursing entry. So it's pretty amazing. It's a really nice community that we have, just working for a total Ibethan hound, not going one direction or the other.
Right. Well, I think this is just wonderful information and insight. And I just want to thank you, Sarah, for sharing your unique perspective, coming from outside of dogs and investing yourself in a less than popular breed and really committing yourself to that preservation and engagement of other people as well who were in your same position. I think that's really special and important for people to hear.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Next Generation with Canine Chronicle TV. This is Sarah Murphy of Abayo Ibethan Hounds, and we look forward to seeing you guys in future segments.